Do you love the Final Fantasy universe? Yeah, me too. Especially the Final Fantasy XIV timeline. With that being said, it seems as though things have gotten a little stale. By that I mean content and development for the game has followed a tried and true guideline for what has worked really well for several years now. The problem is this formula is in dire need of an upgrade, a new lease on life, if you will. Now, I'm not saying the game needs a major rework or anything like that. I happen to be really enjoying the new expansion to this point. The graphical update was much needed, and it looks beautiful. The new zones have been really fun to explore, and the new existential threat to the land of Eorzea is interesting. But the game needs a breath of fresh air. I've compiled a list of 5 things Final Fantasy XIV should implement to not only keep the fans of the series around, but to bring new players into this reality we love so much. Now, before I start diving into what changes should happen, I would be out of line if I didn't commend Yoshi P on what he's been able to accomplish thus far with this IP. Not only is he adored by me, but I've never seen a director loved so universally by an entire fan base. Now, without further ado, here's our top 5 ideas Final Fantasy XIV should implement sooner rather than later. Now, before we move to number 1, I want to give a quick spoiler warning for number 1 specifically. 2, 3, 4, and 5 should be alright to listen to with no spoiler alert. Not really. But number 1, there definitely is. So if you haven't finished all the zones from the expansion yet and you want to be surprised, please skip to the next section to number 2 because we don't want to ruin that for you. All right, so number 1, bring back the original Living Memory Zone. I was pleasantly surprised when I first arrived in Solution 9. The very techie environment was a nice change of pace compared to the traditional towns of Eorzea. Then I got to the zone of Living Memory and was downright amazed. The world was alive, well, kind of, with a ton of souls to interact with, and everywhere you turned bristled with excitement, vibrant colors, high-tech gadgets, and otherworldly entertainment around every corner. Then, before you know it, the zone turns into a dreary, bland, post-apocalyptic wasteland of what used to be. The flashy environment was gone, and the souls along with it. My excitement turned to disappointment, as the flashiest zone was now the most barren. To this I say, bring back the original zone. You don't even need to bring back the souls, just the terrain that was no doubt painstakingly made. I want a bright, flashy zone to enjoy, not another post-civilization landscape. Make a lengthy blue exclamation point quest line to restore the world to its past glory, and I guarantee you tons of people would partake in the adventure. A person wiser than me once said, "Trust me, bro." To that point I say, make it happen. All right, we have our first edit incoming. After implementing this piece, I have good news, bad news, and a shameful admission. The good news is you can revert back to the Golden City by replaying it on Gameplay Plus. The bad news is you have to stop every time you want to progress in the story. And the shameful admission is I've never even used Gameplay Plus before up to this point. I guess this is as good a time as any to finally utilize this feature. I want to give a special shout out to the channel Max Ramis for helping me become aware of how to semi-revert the city to its rightful beauty. For the record, I still think the devs should create a quest line to make it a more permanent fix. Maybe a different instance could be an easy way to do this. Anyways, on to implementation number 2. Our second change would to make healers always needed again. I'm sure most of you already know about the supposed healer strike, which started because of their lack of being needed in certain dungeons. While I felt the effect of this more at the end of Endwalker than I have in Dawn Trail, I do believe that there is some validity in their gripe. Every job, archetype deserves to feel needed. Tanks do. DPS do. Why shouldn't healers? My idea to combat this is with a little creativity. How about a raid with undead bosses that need to be healed in order to be defeated? You could have collateral enemies to keep the DPS busy. Said enemies, along with the boss, would still need to be tanked. And why stop there? Maybe make a raid series with each class being the main focal point. DPS could have major damage checks throughout the raid that need to be met in order to avoid instant party wipes. Tanks could have enemies that hit so hard it would one-shot any mere mortal. And I'm not just talking about tank buster here and there. I'm talking about having to strategically use your mitigations because it's haymaker after haymaker. Or how about some bosses that are invincible from everyone but themselves? The party, or parties, need to survive a ton of mechs, but the Giga Bad Dude gets so pissed off he goes batshit crazy, blowing the whole place up, including himself. Anyways, we would love to read your thoughts and ideas on how to better incorporate healers into the mix so they can once again feel the love. Now on to number 3. Make crafting and gathering more fun. Sure, crafting and gathering can make some good gil at times, but you shouldn't have to sacrifice fun to do so. I mean, that's why we play the game in the first place, isn't it? What if there was special gear or nodes that we could craft or gather, but it was dangerous? Now, before you say, "Epic, that's a terrible idea. We have no way to defend ourselves." Well, before coming to that conclusion, please hear me out. Monsters wouldn't kill or even damage you. They would interrupt the crafting or gathering process, making it extremely difficult to complete the task. Maybe it could be an event that happens once every 3 hours. And maybe once you're interrupted 3 times, you're booted out of the instance. I don't know. Maybe one of you have a better way to spice things up. Or maybe something to add to my suggestion. Either way, please share your ideas with us. I'm sure a lot of the viewers would love to read about them too. Next up, number 4. Rework Duty Finder. How many of you found Duty Finder to be at least somewhat helpful when it came to leveling your jobs up? I know that it was useful for me. Now, how many find Duty Finder useful for high-end content? I get no value at all from it personally. I know we have Party Finder to use, but it feels a little gated or intimidating. I mean, there are a lot of people out there that don't use Party Finder at all, thus missing out on content. How can I be so sure of that fact, you might ask? Because I see people every single day that struggle to even join a hunt train using Party Finder. And for those that do know how to use it, they have to scroll through posts that say such things as, "Only join if you know what you're doing," or "Only using Hector strats," or 1-3 enums, north-south LPs, rotate puddles. To your average player, that can be pretty daunting, especially so if someone doesn't use Party Finder often. If we, the Final Fantasy community, had a system in place where we could queue based on your progression of that particular duty, most people would be able to enjoy the content and the rewards that come with it. For example, if you haven't cleared the duty yet, the person can only queue as a 1-star for that particular challenge. 1 to 4 clears could be a 2-star, and 5+ clears could be a 3-star. And for those 3-star players, if they helped the 1-star players clear, a reward of a few clusters and some tomes could be a fitting gesture of thanks from the developers. Would this system work? Well, I think it'd be a better system than what is currently in place. And now we've come to 5. Add voice chat and possibly chat bubbles. I think pretty much all Final Fantasy players universally agree that voice chat would be a monumental upgrade compared to the chat system we currently have in place. Yeah, there is Discord available, but what I'm talking about is something similar to any Call of Duty game of the last 20 years. Imagine the communication and coordination that we could utilize for raids and trials. Even the highest end content would become a lot more manageable. There could even be 2 different queues, depending on personal preferences, one with voice chat and one without. I mean, more options for a player is usually a good thing, right? And chat bubbles would also be a cool new feature to add. It could help with immersion by having easy to read oval chat boxes over a character's head. Well, compared to one big box in the corner of your screen with all chat dialogue anyways. Final Fantasy XIV also seems like one of the most fitting MMORPGs poised to have them. But once again, what are your thoughts on this? And how do you feel about our list overall? What were we spot on with? And which implementations should go back to the drawing board? In closing, we'd just like to say we really appreciate your time. And thank you for that. We hope that you were at least mildly entertained. And if you were, please consider hitting the like button. And if you're feeling really generous today, maybe even the subscribe button. But I guess I'll just leave you with this. To stay one leg up on the competition, please check out one of our other videos. Have a good one.